name is Megan Hutson, and I'm a Homeschool consultant representing BJU Press Homeschool. Today we are going to take a look inside of the Parent-Led Textbook Kit for the 5th edition of Geometry. This is a full year, 180 days worth of lessons, curriculum for a high school level student. So let's take a look inside of these books. These are the materials you would receive with your 5th edition Geometry Textbook Kit. You would get a copy of the Teacher Edition, the Student Textbook, the Student Activities, the Activities Answer Key, the Assessment Packet, and the Answer Key to the Assessment Packet. Each of these materials play a role in teaching this course to your child. So let's take a closer look to see what's inside each of these materials. This is the Geometry Teacher Edition book. There are actually 2 parts to this Teacher Edition, and this will be part 1. This course has 12 chapters. You'll start with a chapter in Foundations of Geometry, then you'll have Reasoning and Proof, Parallel and Perpendicular Lines, Congruent Triangles, Relationships in Triangles, and Quadrilaterals. You'll then notice that these chapters are grayed out. That's because those chapters are in Part 2 of the Teacher Edition book. So in Part 2, you'll find a chapter on area, circles, surface area and volume, transformation and symmetry, similarity, and an introduction to trigonometry. This page lists some of the features you'll find in the student textbook, and the next several pages will have information for you to read before you begin teaching this course. On this Technology Solutions page, you'll find 3 different websites being highlighted. BJU Press Trove is where classroom teachers will go to get their extra resources to teach the course. Homeschool Hub is where homeschool parents will go to get their extra class resources. You'll also find your digital scheduler and your gradebook. The After School Help website is where students can go to find extra practice and extra tutorials for their geometry work. This page highlights some of the Teacher Edition features. So this is good to review before you begin teaching the course, or if you forget where something is while you are teaching, these are great sheets to refer back to figure out where you need to look for specific things. And we'll talk more about each of these things as we're looking at a lesson in a few moments. And these pages that show how to use your book are actually in the student textbook as well, so students will be able to have these sheets at the front of their book to see what is highlighted within their student textbook. Let's go ahead and jump ahead now to a chapter that I have picked for us to look at. Chapter 4. This is a chapter on congruent triangles, and the pages you're looking at right now are the lesson plan overviews. So this is where I would go when I'm planning my lessons for the following week. I can quickly see what pages I'm going to be on in my student textbook. I can also see what our objectives are. I can see if I need any resources, and I also can see if I need any assessments. So this is just a quick glance for me to be able to see what's coming up. Each chapter will begin with a 2-page spread like this, where it will list out objectives for you as the teacher and an overview of what you're going to be covering. In the student book, they're going to have something that ties what they're about to do with a real-world example, or maybe just something fun or interesting to kind of bring excitement into this chapter for the students. They'll also have the contents for what they're about to be learning in this upcoming chapter. So let's look at lesson 4.1, angles in triangles. The first thing I notice is my section 4.1 overview to this corner of this page. I have my essential question of what we're going to be learning about in this lesson. I also have my objectives. I see that I need an activity as a printed resource. I also see some digital resources I might need and some materials. So I would gather all of these items before I began teaching this course. And then I would begin teaching. Typically, when you're teaching a high school level math course, you're going to be teaching using the examples that are in the student textbook. And this course is very similarly laid out to the way that Algebra 1 was if you did that course last year. So I'm going to be reading through this information with my child to make sure they understand what's happening. And you might notice these little numbers in red. That ties with the information I have down here at the bottom in my teacher edition book, and then also over here on the side. So as I'm reading the lesson with them, whenever I see those numbers, I know that I need to jump to my teacher edition book to get extra information to be able to bring into our conversation. So I'm going to go through this lesson and introduce the new concepts. We are going to then also work through any of the exercises that might be listed here or examples that might be listed to make sure we understand the concept. There are definitions and postulates and theorems mixed throughout geometry. These are things you're going to want to encourage your student to memorize and be very familiar with throughout this entire year. Each lesson also includes a vocabulary list, so your student will know which words have been introduced within the lesson and which words they need to go back and make sure they understand. You may have also noticed there is a QR code listed on this page. These QR codes will be sprinkled throughout the geometry student textbook, so your student will have access to these codes. These QR codes link directly to the After School Help website, so if there is a video or extra practice, maybe a quick tutorial, that will be what the QR code links to, so your student can go directly to that website, get that extra help, and then continue on with their lesson. You may notice that there are exercises on this page and the answers are listed for you here on the Teacher Edition page. You'll also see other answers that are more in depth than what you'll find printed on the student page. So if you need the extra answers, those are usually listed on the margins for you. The assignment will be listed in the Apply section in your Teacher Edition book, and there are 3 different levels of assignment. You can choose from either the basic assignment, the standard assignment, or the advanced assignment, and you can pick based on the needs of what your student needs. So this is going to wrap up the lesson for us. We would finish up our assignment, and then we would check it to make sure our students are understanding what they need to be doing that day. Each lesson also does end with a cumulative review to review concepts from previous chapters. So let's go ahead and flip through a little bit further just to see a little bit more of the next lesson. I'm going to go ahead now and jump ahead to the end of the chapter. Each chapter ends with a chapter review. The first page of the review will be all the key concepts that were taught within this chapter, and it will be broken down by section number. So if you don't remember what one of these postulates were or one of these theorems were, you can go back to that section number and find the information you need. You will also have example problems to work through to make sure you are ready for the test, which would be the next day. And then some chapters actually end with a STEM project. And these STEM projects will be listed in your student textbook, but then the instructions will be in your student activity book. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while. So that would end chapter 4. Now let's jump back to the back. In the back, there is a glossary. So if you need to look up any definitions for words, they are listed in this glossary. And then we also have a section of an appendices. And there's 5 different appendices for this course, and they are listed here in the back for you as well. And then we have the student edition index. Your student will have the same index in the back of their book, but if there's something that they need to review, they can look up that topic and the page numbers here. And then probably my favorite part of this book is that they have the postulates and theorems broken down by chapter for you at the end of this book. And this is also in the student textbook. So if you are trying to remember a specific theorem or postulate and you don't remember exactly which chapter it's in, this would be a quick way to see everything you've learned this year. And these pages are also listed in the student textbook. They're quick reference sheets to be able to have highlights of some of the main formulas you're going to be using throughout the year. And then you'll also end with the symbol page, which is also in the student textbook. So this is the teacher edition for geometry. This next book we're going to look at is the student textbook. So this is actually a textbook style book. So your student is not going to write in it. They are going to instead use a separate sheet of paper, and they're going to show their work in there for you. And similar to the way that the teacher edition book began, here's the intro pages for your student to read through and see some of the highlights of what's in their book. I'm going to jump ahead now. Here is chapter 4, which is what we were looking at in our teacher edition book, starting with the essential question. It's got the contents, and then it's got the story that they can read that will bring something real world into their lesson. And then here's lesson 4.1, which is what we're going to use to understand the new topic each day. Here's that QR code that they've got. You'll notice that their definitions have the bold words for the keywords they need to learn. And then they've also got their skill checks, and they've got their exercises here. They will be doing proofs throughout the year. They will usually be 2-column proofs. Sometimes they will just have to fill in the missing statements and the missing reasons. Other times they will have to write the entire proof from beginning to end. So it just depends on the day's lesson. Remember that geometry is a study of logic. So how to get from point A to point B with all the logical steps to be able to do that. Periodically through the book, you'll find some geometry around us. This one's about architects and buildings, and it will highlight some different buildings and their construction. Also, periodically, you'll have these geometry and history pages that will tie something historical in with the lessons. And this one is a cliffhanger that you'll get to finish in the next chapter. And here's that chapter review for us. So again, here's all the key concepts. And then these will be the problems they would work through to review those topics they've learned about in this chapter. And then here's their intro page to the STEM activity. And again, the STEM activity will be in the activities book. Let's go ahead and flip to the back. Something to be aware of, the back of the student textbook does have selected answers. These are the odd numbered problems. So if you would like to assign the odd number problems and let your child be able to check their work to make sure they're getting them right, that is an option. If you would prefer for them to not be checking their answers after every problem, you might want to assign the even problems. And then let's go ahead and flip to the glossary. This is the same glossary we saw in the teacher edition book. They've also got the index, the theorem and postulate pages, the quick reference sheet, and the symbols. So that is the student textbook. This is the geometry student activities book. This is a workbook style book that can be written in. And this book will start with a table of contents. I'm going to highlight a couple things for you. Chapter 4 has the first STEM project called Do Parallel Lines Exist? And then the second STEM project is in Chapter 9 and it's called Fragile, Pack It Right. Let's go ahead and hop to Chapter 4. So these are extensions, investigations, and more practice for the same things we were learning about in the Chapter 4 pages on the student work text. If you have a child who loves history and loves math, some of these pages would be super awesome to do. You'll also have some constructions to make. This is a course that you're going to want a compass to be able to draw your constructions. You'll also have some pages that will help review at the end of the chapter to make sure you know your terms and symbols. And then you'll also have a cumulative review to review all the things you've learned prior to this chapter. And then here's our STEM project, Do Parallel Lines Exist? So your child will be working through this STEM project directly in this book, filling out as they go. And then there's a grading rubric provided for you in this book as well. So that's how the activity book is lined out for us. This is the activities answer key. So this is going to be answers to go exactly with that activity book. I'm just going to go ahead and flip to Chapter 4. So these would be the answers to go with what we just saw in the student activity book. So this is the answer key for the activities book. The final two items for geometry are the assessment packet and the assessment answer key. The assessments will be quizzes and tests. Usually there is 3 or 4 quizzes per chapter, and then there is 1 chapter test per chapter. So these can be written in, and you can tear the page out, hand it to your child, and then they can take their assessment. This would just be the answer key, so you would use it to grade the assessment when they are done. Thanks for joining me as we looked inside of the 5th edition geometry books from BJU Press Homeschool. If you have any questions about these materials, please feel free to reach out to your local Homeworks by Precept consultant. We are all happy to help you. Have a great day.